The perfectly enlightened Buddha presented an inconceivable number of teachings. The purpose of all teachings is to introduce disciples to the fact that the Buddha nature abides in each and every living being without exception, and that since beginningless time, it has never been obscured or defiled. Due to incidental impurities and obscurations arising from emotional defilements and non-virtuous actions, living beings accumulate negative karma, which prevents them from recognizing their Buddha nature. Those who do not recognize their Buddha nature are referred to as sentient beings, and those who do are called enlightened. Everybody experiences their true nature in certain moments in life, but falls into the state of confusion, that is samsara, due to not recognizing it. Even somebody with very negative karma experiences glimpses of his ultimate nature, but, having failed to recognize it, does not experience liberation. We practice the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of Lord Buddha, to experience the manifestation of our Buddha nature. Attaining Buddhahood or enlightenment means realizing our true nature that is always and already present within. We practice to realize our true nature, but there are a great number of distractions that impede us from concentrating on the practice that we should be doing. Achieving enlightenment doesn't mean acquiring something outside oneself, and it doesn't mean gaining power or fame. Such thoughts and wishes are detrimental and misleading. One recognizes one's Buddha nature when one has perfected the two aims, which are excellent abandonment of conflicting emotions and primitive beliefs about reality, and excellent realization of one's true nature. From among the innumerable teachings to help devotees recognize their true nature, their Buddha nature, the Bardo teachings are most important. We can come to know the non-substantiality of both samsara and nirvana through the Bardo teachings. They were handed down to us by Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche. What is Bardo? It is every intermediate state between a beginning and an end. The state between birth and death is Bardo, and the state between death and rebirth is Bardo. The period between falling asleep and waking up is also a Bardo. There is a Bardo, a gap between every perception and apperception. There are many classifications of Bardo. I will speak about the Bardo between dying and rebirth. Many stages are experienced after the consciousness leaves the physical body and when one takes a new birth. It is possible to realize one's Buddha nature during those stages. This is why I mentioned that the Buddha nature abides in each and every living being without exception. While alive, one needs to exert oneself to realize it. During the Bardo between death and rebirth, however, one's true nature automatically manifests and, if one is trained, can easily be recognized. One fails to recognize it during life because it is too close. One's Buddha nature naturally manifests after one has died and during the Bardos that follow, so those are special opportunities to attain liberation. Therefore, the practice is exceptional. I will speak about the three Bardos after death that last until one is reborn. They are the Bardo of death, the Bardo of Dharmata, and the Bardo of existence or becoming. The Bardo of death is a successive process. Our physical body is an aggregation of flesh, blood, etc., and deteriorates at death. Mind, on the other hand, does not die since it isn't composed of particles. The physical components of our body are formed at birth and disintegrate at death. Our physical body only functions as long as it is sustained by our mind. Every physical body is dependent upon many causes and conditions and is only appropriated in dependence upon them. For this reason, our body is subject to decay and collapses in the absence of our mind, our consciousness. Mind, which isn't an aggregation of particles, doesn't cease when it leaves the body. Its nature is clarity and awareness. Failing to acknowledge the difference between body and mind, ordinary beings are afraid of death. Many people call their body self, refer to as mine, and assume everything ends when they die. These ideas cause extreme bewilderment and anguish. One needs to know that the mind is not identical with the body and continues after death. Even if one trusts that the mind continues after it has separated from the body at death, those individuals who cling to their body are terrified of the thought of losing it and panic when they do. One needs to die peacefully so as not to suffer. Impermanence and the painful consequences of attachment are central teachings of Lord Buddha. He also showed how indefinite the time of death is. Therefore, it is very important to become free from attachment before one dies and to be fully aware of the fact that one experiences a change at that time. Westerners feel quite comfortable moving from a house, city, or country to another. Easterners are more grounded and suffer when they have to move, just as much as Western people suffer when they hear about death. Should one see moving from one location to the next just like death, it wouldn't be agonizing, and one could make preparations. Realizing that one's body is compounded and that all compounded things change, one feels at ease learning about the Bardo and practices as best as one can. Bardo is the most important practice for liberation at death. The Bardo of death concerns the physical body, which consists of an aggregation of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. At death, the elements dissolve, one into the other. It's important to know about the dissolution of the elements at death. Otherwise, the associated experiences can be frightening. One can stay wakefully aware if one recognizes the visions that appear to one when the elements dissolve. The first stage of dying is the dissolution of the earth element into the water element. The dying person becomes physically weak and has difficulties moving his limbs. The internal sign at this stage is that everything is seen in a smoky light. Sight has become hazy and unclear. If not prepared, one panics. We know that this experience means that the earth element is sinking into the water element and remain calm and at ease. The second stage of dying is the dissolution of the water element into the fire element. The outer sign is that all fluids of mouth, nose, etc. become dry. The internal sign is that one's consciousness experiences appearances as a mirage. When the fire element dissolves into the air element during the third stage of dying, the body loses its warmth. The internal sign is seeing sparks flickering in the wind. One's vision has become hazy and very unclear. When the air element dissolves into the consciousness during the next stage of dying, one exhales a long time and has difficulty inhaling again. One's respiration eventually ceases. One perceives a flaming torch that becomes brighter and brighter. The dissolution of the 4 elements sinking into each other is the initial stage of dying and death. Then follows what is called appearance, expansion, and attainment. At the stage of appearance, a dying person perceives a white light, while his inner consciousness apperceives darkness. Now the emotional defilement of aversion dissolves. During the stage of expansion, a dying person perceives everything bathed in red light, while the inner consciousness sees lights that resemble fireflies at night. Now the emotional defilement of attachment dissolves. During the stage of attainment, a dying person perceives everything in black, while the inner consciousness sees a lamp locked in a container that can only illuminate the inside. Now ignorance and delusion dissolve. These 3 stages of appearance, expansion, and attainment are experienced in life too. Every relative phenomenon that is perceived is an appearance. Being attached and clinging to appearances is what is meant by increasing or expanding a perception. Once a perception has expanded in one's mind, it is established in one's mind and is thus attained. These 3 processes continually take place while one apperceives things in life. They dissolve when one dies. After the last 3 dissolution stages have taken place while dying, the father's and mother's energies that one attained when one was conceived unite. One's consciousness leaves one's body, and one blacks out when one's father's white energy drop descends, and one's mother's red energy drop ascends, and they unite in the middle of one's heart chakra. Advanced practitioners realize the ground clear light at this point, the ground clear light being the primordial Buddha Vajradhara, Dorje Chang in Tibetan. What is the ground clear light? It is the unimpeded manifestation of one's mind's true nature, which is the indivisibility of emptiness and clarity. It is beyond birth and death and is non-referential. If one realizes one's mind's true nature, one will instantaneously have achieved the Dharmakaya, the Sanskrit term for truth body. Somebody who isn't trained and has no meditative experiences also perceives mind's true nature at death, but failing to recognize it, continues wandering in samsara. It is necessary to train during life so that one can consciously recognize the manifestation of the ground clear light when one dies. Among the many practices, the Mahamudra instructions show us how to rest our mind in its natural state, free of any mental contrivances. One is not practicing Mahamudra if one clings to thoughts. One merely wins an idea of Mahamudra when one hears about it, but one needs to establish the actual state for oneself. One can't rest in mind's natural state as long as one gives in to the many distractions and clings to them. For this reason, the Bardos of death presents the exceptional opportunity to experience enlightenment. Mind's clear light appears to everyone at death, whether they are practitioners or not, whether they led a virtuous life or not. There are no worldly distractions during the Bardo of death, so it is an exceptional opportunity to attain Buddhahood. Yet, if one doesn't recognize one's mind's true nature at that time, one continues the journey through the next Bardo. This is the reason one meditates now, to become accustomed to recognizing mind's true nature. Our spiritual master introduces us to Bardo so that we recognize our mind's natural state. If we have a spiritual master who gives us these instructions and we meditate them, then we can achieve realization during life. Then, when we die, we experience the clear light that corresponds with our Lama's instructions, which is called the meeting of the mother and son. Attaining enlightenment during life is best, though. Should we fail, there is a chance at death. And so, recognizing the clear light at death is the meeting of a mother and son and is attained by somebody who dies in meditative equipoise. There are different levels of mental stability. Some practitioners rest in meditative absorption when they die because they have recognized the clear light and united with it. Others rest in meditative absorption when they die because they have mastered calm, abiding meditation. It is evident to those who witness the death of somebody who dies in meditative equipoise, which depends upon an individual's practice.